SuperCoach versus Fantasy. It's the age-old question for AFL fans looking for a new way to interact with their sport. But which one's better? In today's video, I'm going to look at what makes these two games unique and what aspects unite them and make them such a good way to follow this great sport. As always, I'm Flash, and let's get into it. Now, I want to preface this by pointing out the obvious. I am primarily a SuperCoach channel, so I might have some unintentional bias towards SuperCoach, but I will try to be as impartial as I can during the course of this video. However, I'm also no stranger to AFL Fantasy either, with this being my third season playing it. So I feel like I'm in a good position to compare and contrast the various aspects of the two games. Also, this video will touch exclusively on the classic versions of each, as I am yet to play the draft version of either, and so don't have the knowledge required to make a comparison. Now, let's point out the obvious similarities between the two games. Both games have the same fundamentals. You have a starting budget, you pick a team of players who will go up and down in price over the course of the season, and you maneuver your way through the season by trading in and out players to improve your team, whilst also scoring well. Another similarity is that they're both free to play. You can buy a premium subscription for both, which will give you additional information like predicted scores and break-evens right in the app, but I've found that this info can be sourced from external sites for free. Now, onto the differences. For this video, I will categorize the differences into two categories. The first category is team structure and trading, and the second category is pricing and scoring. To start off, let's have a look at both games' team structure and trading. The team format for Fantasy and Supercoach are very similar, both having 6 defenders, 8 midfielders, 2 rucks, and 6 forwards on field. However, the bench is where the differences start. Both games have 2 spots for defenders, 2 for forwards, and 1 for rucks. But AFL Fantasy only has 2 bench spots for midfielders, while Supercoach has 3. To make up for this, AFL Fantasy has a special bench spot called the Utility. This spot is available for any player, regardless of what position they play. This means anyone from Sam Cumming to Lachlan McAndrew to Matt Whitlock can be put in the flex. This helps you move different players around your team to accommodate certain things like injuries and other things that might get thrown your way. For Supercoach, they have a similar position called the flex. The flex is also a spot available for any player, regardless of position. However, unlike the utility, the flex counts towards your on-field scoring, but in a unique way. The score from the player in your flex will replace the lowest score anywhere on your field, regardless of position. Meaning, if, let's say, one of your forward rookies has a bad game and scores a 30, but you have a ruck in your flex that scores 100, that 100 will replace your 30 score and the 30 won't count. If your flex is the lowest score, nothing will change. It effectively makes each round best 22, meaning if a player goes down to injury or gets tagged out of the game, you aren't punished as much. Another difference in this category is trades. For AFL Fantasy, the trade situation is simple. You get 2 trades per round, every round, and 3 during the bye rounds. However, for AFL Supercoach, it's much more nuanced. For Supercoach, you have 40 trades that you can use throughout the season, but you can't use more. You can use a maximum of 2 per round and 3 per bye round, similar to Fantasy, but you also get 5 boosts. Boosts allow you to make 1 more trade in a round of your choice, meaning you can make 3 trades in a regular round or 4 in a bye round. This is useful for if you get multiple injuries in the same round and you need to trade multiple players out at the same time. However, these trades count as part of the cap of 40 you get over the season. Now, those of you who are really quick at math will realize that the numbers don't add up, and you would be right. If you use every trade, every round, as well as all 5 boosts, you will run out of trades by the end of round 16, the end of the bye period, meaning you will have 8 long weeks without being able to change your team. This means you have to be careful with your trades through the early and middle parts of the season, something I've learned the hard way the last 3 years. So what does this mean? This means that bad trades in Supercoach are punished more than bad trades in Fantasy, and much more consideration is needed for trades and boosts. But because of the boosts, it can be easier to refresh your team quickly if you get a wave of injuries or poor performances. Now, let's talk about the players themselves. Another big difference between Supercoach and Fantasy is around the players, both how they earn points and how they're priced. In terms of points, the AFL Fantasy scoring system is nice and simple. 3 points for a kick, 2 points for a handball, 3 for a mark, 4 for a tackle, 6 for a goal, 1 for a behind, hit out, or free kick. The only way to lose points is if you give away a free kick, where you lose 3 points. This makes it fairly straightforward to calculate the score if you're at the game or watching from home. SuperCoach scoring is much more complex, however. The base number for points are the same: 3 for a kick, 2 for a handball, 6 for a goal, etc. However, you get bonus points for stuff like if the disposal was effective or if it was contested, and lose points if it was ineffective. You get bonus points for marks if they are contested, interceptions, or both, and hitouts to advantage gain a ruckman a whopping 5 points, but you lose a point if it goes to the opponent. Another quirk about SuperCoach scoring is that it's capped. Only 3,300 points can be earned in a given game over both teams. This leads to something called scaling occurring post-match, where bonus points are added onto a player's score if they scored well in close or crucial points in the match. This is best exemplified when, against North Melbourne, Zach Merritt took a contested intercept mark in the final minute of the game when they were up by a few points. And instead of getting the normal 3 points that he would have gotten for fantasy, in SuperCoach he got a bonus 5 points for it being a contested intercept mark and another 7 points for it being at a crucial point in the game. The SuperCoach scoring method is stupidly complex, but it does a good job in rewarding the players who genuinely have a good game, even if they don't accumulate the ball, and it also doesn't award ineffective ball vacuums. The AFL Fantasy points can be tracked live on the AFL app, while SuperCoach can be viewed on their app by gold subscribers, but also on other websites like FanFooty, Footy Scores, and SuperCoach Live, as well as other sites that are relatively easy to find. Different methods of scoring also leads to different pricing for players and a different overall economy. In AFL Fantasy, the price of a good premium player ranges from about 1 to 1.2 million, but in SuperCoach, that price drops to around 580 to 700k. Okay, so what? The players should still be priced similarly compared to one another, right? Wrong. Let's have a look at Harry Sheezel, for example. In AFL Fantasy, he's priced at 1.45 million, towards the top of the aforementioned primo range. However, in SuperCoach, he barely scrapes by at just 580.4k. This is likely due to the fact that he averages 29.3 disposals, but only at 73% efficiency, and a lot of his possessions were uncontested. For comparison, Matt Rowell is priced at 641 in SuperCoach, but only 1.062 million in Fantasy. Comparatively low to the others around his SuperCoach price range, and almost 100k lower than Sheezel in Fantasy, despite being 60k higher in SuperCoach. The rookie prices are also different, with an AFL Fantasy rookie being priced at and above 230k, and the average SuperCoach rookie being priced at around 120k. However, for SuperCoach rookies, there are different levels to their pricing. A player who has been on a list for 1 or more years, and who hasn't played or scored meaningless points when they have played, is priced at 119.9k. A player who was picked in the top 20 of the most recent draft is priced from 203.5k to 118.5k, with the price getting lower the lower the player was taken. A rookie taken below pick 20 is priced at 113k, and a player picked in the rookie draft, signed as a train-on player during the preseason, or taken in the mid-season draft is priced at the minimum price of 99.1k. For AFL Fantasy, players picked between pick 1 and 30 in the most recent draft are priced from between 350k to 234k, with each pick later in the draft being 4k cheaper. Every other rookie, when they be a second or third year player who haven't played yet, an SSP signing, or a mid-season draftee, is priced at the basement price of 230k. However, players who have played before, but not that much in previous years, like Will Brodie or Harry Schoenberg, will still remain at their elevated price. So this leads to the prices of some rookies being drastically different than others over the 2 games. For example, let's have a look at 2 rookies: the aforementioned Will Brodie and Richmond defender Josh Gibcus. Gibcus only played 1 game last year, a game where he didn't get much of the ball, but his disposals were contested, earning him comparatively more SuperCoach points than Fantasy. This has resulted in him having a slightly elevated price in SuperCoach of 139k, but a basement price in Fantasy of 230k. Will Brodie, however, who played and scored well in 2022, but not since then, still has an elevated price of 457k. However, due to the fact that he's barely played in 2 years, has fallen all the way down to 119k, lower than Gibcus's, despite his fantasy price being almost twice as high. Now, the way that players actually change in price is pretty much the same, but there is one key difference. Both games use a similar formula to calculate the break-even score for each player, which, if passed, means the player will rise up in price, but if fallen short of, means the player will drop in price. However, for AFL Supercoach, there is somewhat of an amnesty period for the first 2 games a player plays in the season, meaning that only after the 3rd game they play will they rise in price. No such period exists for fantasy, which makes it easier and safer to pick which rookies are the right ones. This is because if a player comes out and scores an 80 in either formats in their first game, in fantasy you might be compelled to pick him up immediately because he's already risen substantially in price and will do so again next round. But in Supercoach, you can afford to wait. Now let's say that player gets injured in the next game. In fantasy, you're stuck with a dead rookie, but in Supercoach, because you could afford to wait, you avoid having to spend a trade to get him out. Now, that's the end of the major game-changing differences between the 2 modes, but let's have a look at one more smaller, but still vital aspect of both games: the prizes. For AFL Supercoach, the winner, the player who scores the most points overall during the course of the season, wins a whopping $50,000, and the runner-up gets a consolation of $5,000. Places 3 to 10 also win $1,000 for their efforts, and there is also an in-season tournament called the SuperCoach Cup, the winner of which gets a cool trophy and $1,000. The top scorer for each round also gets a prize of $1,000, which is doubled to the premium subscription Supercoach offers. If you place 2nd to 10 in a round, you win a $50 Swish voucher, which, as I found out, isn't nearly enough to get a video from a prominent AFL player. For AFL Fantasy, they offer much more prizes. For the top overall scorer, they win a Toyota Tundra Platinum, as well as a grand final package for 2, as well as $20,000 in crypto. The runner-up receives a cash prize of $10,000, 3rd place wins $5,000, 4 to 6 wins $1,000, and 7 to 10th wins $500. The team with the highest total value also wins $6,000 in crypto, and the winner for each round wins an $100 AFL store voucher, a full-size Sharon, and $200 in crypto, with 2nd to 5th still receiving the $200 in crypto. For the winners of each supporting club leagues, they get 1 AFL Guernsey and $400 in crypto. And lastly, if you place top 100 overall, you win a special numbered hat. AFL Fantasy, surprise surprise, is sponsored by a crypto company. Bet you didn't see that one coming. So clearly, with the amount of categories they have prizes for, and their position as AFL's official fantasy game, AFL Fantasy has the best prizes. So, if that's all you care about, that's your game. But what if you don't care as much about the prizes? Which game's best for you then? Well, my verdict, after hours of research and years of playing both formats, is this. If you're a more casual fan who doesn't have that much time to spend researching scores and performances, then AFL Fantasy is your game. But if you want more of a challenging experience, then I would lean towards SuperCoach. But why do I think this is? While AFL Fantasy prices change from the first game, making picking rookies more risky, you do get 51 trades compared to the 40 offered by SuperCoach. It's also much easier to view live stats, and with that and the articles posted to the app every few or so days, it's much easier to play without doing significant research. SuperCoach, however, with its limited trades and tactical trade boosts, gears itself more towards someone who wants a more planned and calculated playing experience. However, a big important factor is what those around you play. If you have a work fantasy league or a club SuperCoach league, I would lead towards the one you can play with friends, because fantasy games are always a much better experience with friends. I hope this video has helped you see the merit of both games and guide you in a decision if you only want to commit to one. If you want to follow my journey through both games, then I would encourage you to subscribe and keep an eye out for my fantasy team reveal, which should come out a day or so after this. While you're down there, I would appreciate you chucking us a like to help boost this video in the YouTube algorithm and get this video out to more people. And so, with that, I'll bid you farewell and see you in the next one. Happy coaching.